Video games, am I right? Hi, didn't see you there. I still don't. Video games, yes. Video games are no stranger to cut content. Often developers, when they do cut content, leave a lot of those files in the depths of the game because it would honestly take longer to rework the game without these files than to just leave them as is, and then it lets us just wonder what could have been when it's inevitably discovered. One of the most notorious examples of this for me being M478, the droid planet in Knights of the Old Republic 2, the Sith Lords. Large portions of this planet are complete, and it allowed modders to restore it to the game, and even further create an enhancement project of sorts. Similarly, an effort has begun, or at least it was beginning, to restore the world of Callistan to the original Mass Effect by mod author Vegs, or Vegs, I don't know, correct me if that's wrong. This mod is very much in an alpha state. It's playable, you can get through it, but there's a lot of work that is yet to be done. Currently, I'm not sure where this mod stands. The last update was about a year or so ago, so is it still being worked on? I don't know. Last I heard or could find that it was on hiatus of some kind while the mod author worked on other projects, but I digress. I played through it myself, and we're going to get into it and talk about what the alpha is like and its potential should this continue. Subscribe if you want to, or don't, I can't make you. I don't want to bury the lead, but you know I love a bit of preamble before the function. What is Callistan? In Mass Effect 1, you go to a mining planet in Therum to find Dr. Liara T'Soni in a Prothean dig site. The result is just a few minutes of you driving the Mako to the end of the path from point A to point B and going into the ruins. You find Liara and she has herself trapped. We spring her free, and from there, we're off. It's probably the least exciting mission story-wise in the original game, as it just serves as a way of rounding out your squad with that final squad member. Originally, this was supposed to be Callistan. It would similarly be a mining planet or colony, but it had way more content and story attached. Again, this mod is very much an alpha, so you're not going to be able to really get any of this from playing through it today. I do wonder if, like M478, once it's restored, if it'll prove itself to be a worthy re-addition to the game, or more of a, oh, I kinda see why you cut this over other things. The main plot of Callistan would have involved a struggle between a faction known as the Union and the cartel over the mining complex known as Throwdown. In addition to that, you would have also had some minor assignments to complete. There was definitely some potential based on my reading up on the cut content, or the content that was cut. The Mass Effect fandom wiki has all of this outlined and written out. I realized quickly how much was planned for Callistan that had to be reworked into what we know as Therum, that planet we go to in the vanilla game as it stands all those years ago. There's even this old E3 demo where they land on Callistan. There is a conflict between Garrus and Shepard, where Garrus is concerned about the safety of the miners in the colony, and Shepard wants them to prioritize the mission over everything. I have to confess, over the years, I always thought this was cut content from the game, or at least it was cut from the game proper, but I later learned this part never actually existed. It was only there to show the dialogue system in the game. Now, I do feel a little gaslighted having learned that just recently. I mean, there's even a cinematic trailer where Shepard denies a distress call from Overia to go to Callistan instead, and I know now that was mainly to advertise how you'll make a lot of choices in the game and it's not going to be easy, but come on, BioWare, Casey Hudson, you lied to me. What's going on? It's fucked up. That aside, I played through the mod, last updated almost a year ago as I mentioned earlier. Story-wise, it'll play out all the same leading up to it. You go to the Knossos system or Knossos system of the Artemis Tau cluster, you'll find Therum as you normally would in the vanilla game. Only you notice that you can't land on Therum. You can only survey it now instead. Once you can, a message pops up that reads, "Scans of the planet Therum reveal a dig site on the surface. Upon further inspection, it appears that Liara T'Soni abandoned the archaeological dig after uncovering a Prothean star chart. According to these notes, she was headed somewhere in the Callistan Rift system." I also have to say, I don't know how they got all of that just from scanning the planet, but I get it's a simple way of integrating it into the game. Either way, we are headed off to the Callistan Rift, specifically in the Baylor system. And here is Callistan. It's technically labeled as a moon, where Therum is listed as a planet, but regardless, it's a world we're going to go to. I'm going to make a couple of notes here, give you just a couple quick bullet points about the mod's alpha state here in case you wanted to try it out yourself, or you were curious about it that you should be aware of going in. But again, I'm going to present it as quick little bullet points so we can get into the meat of my experience playing it. One, it's eerily quiet, a fact I'll mention a few times. Music is reused from Theros right now, and there's no voiced lines. Well, there's one, but we'll talk about that later. Camera gets a bit wonky in the dialogue sections, mostly in the bar section with the bartender. Areas are not completely fleshed out, as it's hard to tell where you can walk through and what is not able to be opened. It is playable from start to finish, meaning you can put this in your game without it breaking the experience. There's not much story to see here or much to be fleshed out otherwise. Further, there's plenty of information on what is included in this release and what is planned for the next update on Nexus mods should this project continue, and that'll be linked down below. I apologize if some of these little notes are a bit redundant as I go through my experience here, but I felt like it was helpful to just note some of these things at the outset. Maybe you want to stop here and just give it a shot yourself and then come back. I don't know. First off, when you depart the ship, this landing bay here is just a very similar build or look to how Pharos is when you land. The lighting is a bit brighter, and even then, as I said earlier, it uses the music you should hear or would hear on Pharos, which is a good thing because there's parts of this mod where the sound is done or goes out. It does just drop out, not drop out like a bug, more the track ended, the music ended, and it hasn't looped back around yet. And it does feel a little bit awkward. You kind of underestimate there how important a game's soundtrack sometimes can be to just you walking around the world. So there's that. Even if you're just used to hearing some room noise or a backing track and even voiced NPCs when you talk to them. We meet our first character, Charlie Booker. He's the dock administrator of some kind. He says he manages the arrivals and departures to make sure all permits are in order. He also apparently manages the garage downstairs if we need any repairs. He's the guy for it. He also sells some stuff too, which is a little weird, mostly just armors and weapons, which is a bit odd coming from a guy who just tracks arrivals and departures. We then can walk through the tunnels. The tunnels consist of two pathways. Neither have much to see except a few characters that we can talk to. On the right, we have Oranath, a Hanar who serves and administers medical care and equipment. He apologizes for the poor equipment and setup as a Solarian named Smiley acquired the infirmary himself and made it his residence. On the left side is a Volus Karkath. You can listen to a news bulletin here, which admittedly does make things seem a bit more normal in what has been a relatively silent endeavor so far. And to be clear, I am understanding of this being an alpha, so that's not really a criticism, just an observation. Karkath doesn't really introduce himself either. He just kind of says, "Hey bro, I'm gonna sell you weapons if you want," and you could be like,
"Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down."
Anyway, if we head forward and look around a bit, and if you have played Bring Down the Sky from Mass Effect 1, you'll immediately recognize this as the final area of that DLC when you confront Balak. This is because they repurposed some of those assets from Callistan as they originally had planned for the DLC, but if and when this mod is further updated, this is something they'll have to take under consideration. I think just some lighting adjustments and changes to some textures could make it feel a bit different, but I'm not a modder, so I don't fucking know. Later, BioWare went on to reuse some of the background story that they didn't use for Callistan for Omega, which appears in Mass Effect 2. If we head over here, there's a guard that is blocking access to the infirmary, which he now says is a private residence. We can't go in there, and if we ask where Liara T'Soni is, he says he can't answer that. After this, I walked around a bit talking to some of the other characters I could find. Maddie Kedward, who is a prostitute that will only talk with a male shepherd, and then you have Matthew Baudelaire, who will only talk to a female shepherd. There apparently was an assignment that would have freed both of them from their contractual obligations as prostitutes, but that's not accessible here at the moment. Now, I did have to go and reload an earlier save because I did make a bit of a mistake here and accidentally left the station before I could explore some of the rest of the complex, and you can't go back, so yeah, had to reload that earlier save so I could visit the other two spots. Now, granted, there's really nothing too interesting that I missed. Mainly a bar and some offices, and we have two other characters we can talk to with some basic conversation. Administrator Tom Beery runs this complex known as the Throwdown. We can ask her basic things about the cartel and the Union factions, and we come to find that there is some compromise on her part to keep the peace and let people blow off steam. She looks the other way on their various crimes and affiliations to keep everything running smoothly. Now, if you're curious, definitely read up on the cut content for this portion of the game, as it would take too long for me to go through. It speaks to a wider conflict we would be addressing throughout the narrative of this world. The thing I don't know if I fully understand is how any of it helps us find Liara. At least all of the other planets kind of at least have that little through line for why you were going there. And that's why I say maybe this will end up being one of those Once it's restored, we'll understand why it was cut, better sort of scenarios or things. In any case, we can visit the bar too, lovingly recreated here with some neon lights and signs. We can buy a drink, and there's some odd camera angles and whatnot depending on dialogue choices, and I imagine if there are future updates to this mod, it will be ironed out, so don't worry about that. Or I'm not worried about that. There is one full cutscene in this entire mod that's a little weird, and it also features the only spoken voice line. It gave me a little bit of shell shock. I was like, where'd that come from? Sebastian Van Heerden.
Hello, Officer Hera. You should say hi, Miss Nightingale. Seems like he ignored your greeting, miss. Do you want me to teach him to show some respect? As you wish. Last time I gave him a lesson, he was too drunk to even notice.
I don't know if this audio is restored or not, but it does sound like it. This supposedly was part of a quest line that would run in tandem with the main plot of Callistan, and could have helped the player resolve the conflict peacefully without needing charm or intimidate, depending on how it ended. After you explore the bar, the offices, and the tunnels, the only other thing you can do is go down to the garage, lower down the Mako, and continue on. At this point, there's not much here to talk about because the story progressed very similarly as it would have otherwise had you went to Therum instead. Everything plays out the same and ends the same. The only thing is that you can't go back to Callistan's Throwdown mining complex, and there's not enough plot fleshed out here to do anything else besides have basic conversations. The potential here will lie in if this mod is finished in the execution of it. Just how much of this mod is being restored and how much of it will need creative liberties taken from the mod's author. I confess I do not know how much of the files or audio was done during development, so I don't know how much can be restored, but my fear would be that it goes the route of other mods recently that use existing characters and try to use AI to recreate voices from the main game of the existing characters. Just to be clear so there's no confusion, I don't have any indication or insider knowledge there to know if that's a direction they would go. I've just seen this trend as of late to do that and hope they just get a sound alike or two if need be for that stuff. It's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it's what makes mods like when I play Beyond Skyrim Bruma just a bit extra engaging, that there's real people voicing these characters and there's real heart poured into it. We'll see. Again, I don't know this mod author, so it doesn't come from any malice or knowledge of them. I'm just speaking generally. In any case, it would be interesting to see should we get a finished product at some point. I would love to see it fleshed out more in future updates. I want to get a feel for the content, for the finished content, so we can reflect on it here accurately. My curiosity, though, was satiated in some way with Knights of the Old Republic 2 M478. It very clearly is a planet that should have been cut because it is kind of boring and uninteresting, even with the enhancement project. But I love that the modders brought it back to explore. They did a great job, and so far, I think this could be interesting to explore, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. Until then, like, comment, dislike, subscribe, I don't know. Something to tell me if you want to see more content like this or not, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Love you all.